Senator Gailey, if you'll hang out with us, I think we'll go ahead and knock out your other matter if you would like to while you're up there. Members, we're going to move now to Senate Bill 49. Senator Gailey, the lady is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 49 is captioned the Parents' Bill of Rights. And the objective of this bill is to delineate what the rights of parents in North Carolina are relative to their children, especially considering medical care and the public school system, to help parents to be aware of what their rights are, and also to require local educational units to put in place policies and procedures that give effect to those rights, that notify the parents of what their rights are, and then have procedures whereby there's actual exercise of those rights. So I'm happy to answer questions about particular sections of the bill. It's rather lengthy. If the chair wishes for me to go through the bill and explain it further, I'm happy to do that. I'm here to do what y'all want me to do.
Members, is there discussion or debate on the bill? Representative Dahl, the lady is recognized.
So last week we voted to take away some parents' rights, and now we're giving them back. So I need to understand what the purpose of this bill is, because most of these, when I read them, I know my mother was able to access all of this information. I mean, we didn't have some of these things we didn't have in school. So I'm really concerned and just don't understand why we need this. Because what it seems to do is it seems to largely direct towards children's sexuality and or teaching about two moms, two dads, and that kind of thing. And there's some other stuff in here, but I'm wondering, number one, why that's included and why that, I mean, from all the teachers I talk to, somebody says, oh, I have two moms. Okay, great. And now the color, what color are we looking at? I mean, it's not some huge deal and there's no indoctrination. So I'm confused as to why we need all of this.
Right, so there's a lot to unpack in that question. I thank you for the question. So the question of where did this come from and why do we need a delineation of the parents' rights, first, especially vis-a-vis the school system or the medical community. I think that when folks were shut up for a very long time, in Alamance County, we were one of the last school systems to go back to in-person learning. When children were at home with their parents, supervising them and their education, the parents came up with a lot of concerns and questions about the curriculum that they saw, about things that their children were learning. And then when parents approach the teacher or approach the principal, they get the stiff arm. They get the, no return phone call, no return email, a lack of response. Unfortunately, it's pretty common. And I had that experience as a parent where I did not get a timely response when I had questions about my child's education. So I think that's really where the genesis of this bill comes from, is parents having concerns, questions about their children's education and feeling that the public school system is not responsive to what they're asking. So as far as other things, so there are some things in here that are new. It's not a regurgitation of laws that can be found in other place. For example, FERPA, the Federal Records Law, that is in here. But then there are other things that are new, like page 2, line 32 through 35, that a parent would be promptly notified if an employee of the state suspects that a criminal offense has been committed against his or her child. That's new. The main thing that's new in here is the communication of information from the public school unit to the parent. So there's a requirement that they furnish information at the beginning of the school year. How do you get in touch with the school? How do you get answers to questions? And when somebody has a concern, how is that going to get resolved in a timely way? So that's very important. I'm flipping through to the parts that I think you're more concerned about, I think the parts that you were alluding to, page 8, lines 18 through 14, age-appropriate instruction for grades kindergarten through 4th grade, and the previous page, page 7, that the governing body of the public school unit shall adopt procedures to notify a parent of prior to any changes in the name or pronoun used for a student in school records or by school personnel. I would direct your attention that of this lengthy bill, those are less than 15 lines, maybe less than 10 lines of the whole bill. So the thrust of the bill, the direction of the bill is not those things, but those things are included in the bill. And if you want me to talk about those particular things, I'm happy to do that.
Representative Dahl.
So, yeah, I mean, what I'm concerned about is I'm concerned about children and abuse, not necessarily from the school system, but from parents who don't agree with whatever they've discussed. They disclose it to a teacher. That teacher is then forced to tell the parents. There are a lot of ramifications in there. And so I'm really concerned about that. I'm concerned because we still have therapies that are harmful to children that are still done due to the fact that the parents don't agree. I'm not saying that we need to run around. I don't want you to think I'm being flippant. I am truly worried that these 2 paragraphs could be detrimental to education as we know it, because we're pitting the teachers against the students, and the teacher's responsibility is to teach the students. And the parent's responsibility is to teach their child whatever values they want to have at home. So I'm wondering, can we just take those 2 paragraphs out and let the bill stand after that?
So Representative Dahl, I appreciate your concerns, and I appreciate the heart from which they arise, and I know that they are sincere and that you're concerned about the welfare of children, as we all are. If there is abuse, if there is present abuse, then we know that the public school employees have a duty to report that to the Department of Social Services. Otherwise, when you withhold information from parents that is vital to their understanding about their child's mental health and their well-being, then they are being adjudicated essentially of potentially abusing them without having a hearing. In the United States, when we take away a person's property, when we take away their liberty, when we take away their rights, there is a legal process that's always followed where, if you want to search somebody's house, you have to have probable cause. If you want to stop and frisk somebody, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. If you want to take away somebody's property, in a civil matter, somebody has to file a lawsuit, and there's rules of evidence that go through. What I would say that people are proposing is that parents lose the right to essential information about their child's mental health on a mere suspicion of that the parent might or might not do something. And that's not fair to them. That's depriving them of their right to parent their own child, whether biological or foster or adopted or whatever, their own child. They're being deprived of their right to direct their care, their education, their upbringing, their mental health, their well-being. And it's just on the suspicion of a school employee who is not trained, they're not counselors, they don't know. They're going off of what this vulnerable, insecure child is saying. And maybe there's things going on in the household that the school employee is not aware of. Maybe somebody's died, maybe somebody's getting a divorce, maybe they're facing homelessness or financial insecurity. There can be all kinds of reasons that this child is struggling and suffering. And talking to the parents about those things is essential in communicating or in addressing that child's mental health problems. Also, I understand that there are some, I've read in the newspaper that there are public schools across the country who have adopted policies that we will not tell the parents if the child wants to change their pronouns. I am told that that has also happened in public school units in North Carolina. However, there is no policy against calling the parent if the child's pregnant. There is no policy against calling the parents if the child's doing drugs. There is no policy against calling the parents if the child is acting out in violent ways toward other children. Of all the problems that a child can have, this is the only area that people are pushing to keep the information from the parents. And I think that that is questionable, to say the very least. Why? If you have a child who is suicidal, if you have a child who has mental health problems, the first person that should be called and brought into the conversation is the parents. So, that's my response to that.
Representative Torbett.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. Would you not, I guess, categorize this as a reaffirmation of the relationship of a parent and a child, as opposed to what some would think it should be between an educational system and the child? And we're putting weight where the weight belongs, is that, like I say, reaffirming the laws, the legal laws of the rights of the parent in relation to their minor children. Isn't that pretty much surmise what we're doing here?
Thank you, Representative Torbett. Yes, I would agree with that. I would say, parents have the duty, they have the responsibility to care for their children. If Representative Dahl has a child, it's not my obligation or duty to help take care of her child. That's her responsibility. If I have one, it's not hers to take care of mine. But so we have that responsibility, and the state should respect that and support that in families and not seek to undermine it or undercut it through the action of state employees operating through the public school system.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Galey. I am a parent to 3 public school children, and I just today was talking to one of their school principals, so I know the importance of parents being involved as advocates for their children, and I respect that you do too and are trying to help parents. My concern is actually comes from after more than a decade serving really high-need school populations and children, many of whom were in really risky situations with their own families or foster care situations. And in particular, on page 7 of the bill, lines 31, it says, in accordance with the right of parents provided in Chapter 114A of the General Statutes, the procedure shall include a requirement that school personnel do one or both of the following. 1, encourage a child to discuss issues related to the child's well-being with his or her parent. And 2, facilitate discussion of the issue with the child's parents. So certainly for many of our children, and probably even most of our children in public schools, discussing issues with their families is what we would want to happen, because we hope, and many of them are in supportive, loving situations with their families. As you referenced, there's a requirement when there is abuse that school personnel report the abuse. What I am worried about is the gray area between those two dynamics. There are many children for whom school personnel are the safest, emotionally, mentally, and physically safe adults that they are with on a daily basis. I have spent my career before coming to the legislature with those children in schools where that was a large percentage. Many of those children, would it technically be defined as abuse to report? Maybe not. Are they still in situations where their mental well-being or their concern that they're worried about is directly related to the adults that they live with, and that being forced to communicate that would lead to more harm for children? Yes. And that gray area is why I'm concerned about this and concerned about the impact, particularly on our school personnel who serve our most vulnerable children. Thank you.
Representative Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to do a scenario, and it's pertaining to Representative Clemens' statements on the gray area. If a child comes in, the nurse, the staff reports to the Department of Health and Human Services or the DSS, whoever they have to report to, that sexual abuse is taking place inside of the family unit. How are you going to cover that gray area? And number one, most adolescents, most teenagers, they're going to do peer talk. They're going to talk to who they're comfortable with first before they even go to an adult. And then maybe they go to mental health if it's available in the school. That gray area gives that parent, if that child leaves school, if DSS doesn't immediately step into there, the possibility is that child returning back home to that same abusive situation and possibly dying. That's the gray area, and that's a huge gray area for me.
Members, the chair has a number of members of the public who have signed up to speak. Are there any other members seeking to debate before the chair goes to public comment? Representative Torbett, the gentleman
Thank you.
recognized.
I'd also like to bring the members' concern. There are other issues that we are addressing through laws that actually apply to some of the questions that we have. One we just passed recently, which is like a threat assessment that could help determine if a child is having that kind of stress or where they might want to cause harm to themselves or others. So some of these concerns most definitely are valid concerns, but they are being addressed through other legislation that we're running as well.
Members, if no other members seek recognition before the chair goes to public comment, the chair will go ahead and move to public comment. As always in the Rules Committee, we will allow up to 1 minute of discussion. And the chair will begin with, it looks like Cameron Pruitt. Pruitt maybe. Chair apologizes if that's incorrect. To ask this individual to please come to the microphone and identify yourself. And if you're here on behalf of somebody, who you're on behalf of, and speak to the bill for up to 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Cameron Pruitt, and I promise my teachers taught me good handwriting in school. I just forgot. But I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I just want to say that not only is this bill silent on students' rights, it undoes decades of anti-bullying work, such as was done by the late Janice Covington. It makes our state less attractive for families with LGBTQ kids, and it will cause harm by treating people differently solely on the basis of their gender identity and sexual orientation. I benefited from a compassionate teacher, Ms. Terry, when I was being bullied as a young kid. And the actions in this bill will have a chilling effect on those teachers, where kids may not be able to benefit like I did. Finally, if this bill and these rights are so important, why the carve-outs? Why do charter schools and private school kids not get the same rights? Why are their parents being denied rights? It's because, like so many actions this session, this is an attack on our public schools and an attack on the LGBTQ community. If parents should have rights, they should have rights in every taxpayer-funded school, vouchers and charters included. It is an attack, and you've overplayed your hand by making sure that you continue to attack LGBTQ kids. Stop the slate of hate.
Robbie Kern.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebby Kern. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I'm the Director of Education Policy at Equality North Carolina. I'm based in Charlotte. One thing that my educators did really well was allowing me to use all of the 6 names that I went through in high school until I was able to land on Rebby. Even though my parents called me a nickname that I didn't quite love, having my name honored and reflected in school was so important, even though they weren't able to see the deep abuse that I was going through in school, and I think that's important to name here. But what's also happening to our students right now is even in the discussion of these bills and the mere possibility that they could pass, young people are already reporting that their mental health is dropping and they're having increased senses of anxiety and depression just with the discussion of this bill. This bill would unfortunately widen exclusions for young people who are already facing bullying, bias-based remarks in school, and I would encourage you to spend your time tightening up ways for educators to better respond to these remarks that are already happening, to further ensure our students are protected from this harm on all aspects, from peers, from educators, and school staff. Thank you.
Ellie Isley.
My name is Ellie Isley, and I'm a trans woman. These laws are aimed at my community. All of them, not just this one. The ones that y'all have passed the other day, where you say that parents don't have a right to the health care of their children. And then you try and do this and say that they had the rights to discriminate and abuse their children. I was lucky in high school. I had a teacher who cared for me. My parents did not know that I am trans until now. They found out through the news because I was never going to tell them because of their views. This probably would have killed me in high school if this law was there and I had no other option. I don't want that for children. It's not okay. And y'all should vote against this.
Jose Velasquez.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Velasquez. I'm originally from Goldsboro, North Carolina, and I'm now studying economics at Tufts University. So I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, ages 6, 11, and 19, all of which live in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I love my siblings, and if you guys know anything about being the oldest, it's your responsibility to protect, care, and guide them. My siblings are fully aware of my sexual orientation, but that does not matter. It transcends my our label that I have for myself. This morning we're talking about SB 49 and the effects it'll have, and I'm just confused about why it's necessary. During my education, I attended 3 underfunded Title I schools in Dudley, North Carolina. As a child, my concerns weren't really if my teachers were going to talk about sexual orientation or gender identity. My concerns were if my classmates and I were eating enough at home. My concerns were if I was even going to have a teacher for that academic year. So there's bigger things going on right now, and this really isn't a topic that it's important to talk about, but is it worth time? All right. Thanks, guys.
Javier Adams. Again, Chair apologizes. I'm sorry, Xavier Adams. Chair apologizes. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Xavier Adams, and I am the NCAT 2022 Prudential North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year. Like many of you, I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, and I have 2 degrees in religious studies. It was in the church where I learned to love people as Christ did. It was based on this teaching that I decided to become a public school teacher. As a Christian and teacher, my responsibility is to serve, care for, and work alongside my students to create a better and more accepting world. As politicians, you each share this responsibility with me, regardless of your religious and political party affiliation. If Senate Bill 49 is passed, we will continue to create a society that has lost sight of what matters most in public education, putting students first. Therefore, please vote no on Senate Bill 49 because it does not center the most vulnerable students in our society, being queer students. Thank you.
Hannah Wilson.
Good afternoon, members of the House Rules Committee. I am Hannah Wilson, and I am a first-year teacher in Durham Public Schools at the Durham School of Technology. Senate Bill 49 in its current form has the possibility to enact change that is in direct opposition to the intended goals of this legislation. North Carolina educators, students, legislators, parents, and community members are seeking to create a safe, equitable, and exceptional learning experience for all students. All effective educators know that a school is only as strong as its connection to the community it serves. However, schools for many are a safe space for LGBTQ+ students to explore their identities and be their authentic self when they don't have a safe community outside of the school space. The extremely upsetting reality for 1 in 3 students who identify as being queer, including myself at one point, is that they are not in homes that affirm their identity. Although there are provided exceptions to reporting pronouns and names to parents, the reality is that we cannot understand or guess what will happen when a student goes home. Thank you.
Renee Seckel.
My name is Renee Seckel, and I want to tell you that SB 49 only works for bad parents. And I tell you that because I had bad parents. The cardinal sin in my family was to tell that my mother's nickname for me was Devil's Spawn. That when she got mad, she'd take me by the hair and she'd throw me on the floor and she'd kick any part of my body that she could reach, but that wasn't the worst. I couldn't tell either that when you got my dad really mad and he took his belt off, oh God, you better run. I couldn't tell any of that. I tried once. I did tell a teacher something that was happening, and her well-meaningness, she went and she told my parents, and I have spoken in this body about what happened to me that day. This bill traps children in that gray area where the abuse doesn't rise to the level of removal from the home, but is still terrible and painful and traumatic. And it tells them that they can't tell. There's no parent they can tell, because if they do, either their parents are going to get a call, or the school is going to report to Child Protective Services, and they're going to be responsible for destroying their family, because, yeah, that's something my parents told me too. Please don't do this to us.
Jan Gerard.
Hi, my name's Jan Gerard, and I live in Chatham County. This is, as this previous speaker said, this is a bill that supports poor parenting. I'm fortunate that I have a transgender grandchild, and she's thriving as a 12-year-old because of the acceptance of her family. And she will do fine no matter what all these horrible bills do, because she has the support of her family. I worry about the kids that don't have that support, and they have no one to talk to, no one to go to, except maybe a trusted adult in a school system. And you're saying that they can't talk to that person without them coming to their parents and outing them, basically. So these kids are in danger of self-harm, mutilation, cutting off their breasts, or what have you, and they're going to be traumatized and risk of suicide and self-loathing. Please, the hypocritical 808 that passed yesterday denying parents' rights to affirming gender care, that the hypocrisy is appalling. Thank you.
John Rustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm John Rustin, president of the North Carolina Family Policy Council. For decades, state and federal courts in this General Assembly have recognized that parents have a fundamental right to the care, custody, and control of their children. As Senate Bill 49 clarifies, this fundamental right does not end when a child enters the school building or a healthcare facility. In fact, one of the greatest predictors of child's well-being and success is parental involvement, and Senate Bill 49 seeks to restore transparency and a sense of partnership and cooperation between parents and their child's school and healthcare providers. As for the concerns expressed about the bill outing children to their parents, we have compassion for individuals who are struggling with identity issues and gender dysphoria. However, for a school to willfully withhold this information from parents is a breach of trust and a violation of the parent's right to know, especially when a student has publicly requested to be called by a different name or pronouns by their teachers and fellow students. We urge you to support this legislation. Thank you.
Mary Suma.
My name is Mary Suma. I'm General Counsel for North Carolina Values Coalition, and I'm happy to support this bill and commend you for bringing it to the committee. In a free society, the family, not the government, is its basic unit. Parents, not educators or doctors, are tasked with the privilege and responsibility to care, educate, and provide for their children. Parental rights are the brick and mortar of the wall protecting the family from government intrusion, and since 1923, in the case of Myers versus Nebraska, the court has recognized parents' rights as fundamental. Parents are tired of public schools and healthcare professionals counteracting these values, hiding critical information, encouraging children to adopt identities and lifestyles that are harmful, using obscene books and materials in the classroom, teaching LGBT ideologies, and I could go on and on. The Parents' Bill of Rights is a good step in addressing some of these problems. It will require that parents are informed of their legal rights. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Kyle Warren Love.
My name is Kyle Warren Love. I am here to speak against Senate Bill 49. I am a resident of Prospect Hill in Caswell County. I grew up there and I am proud to call it my home today. Growing up in a rural area meant there was only one middle school and one high school in the entire county for me to go to school. Schools should be a place where children can learn to live and succeed in this world. The reality is, this is a world where LGBTQ people exist. I trust parents to raise their kids to be able to respond to those lived experiences in a loving and caring way, even if some people don't agree. That has been my experience living in Caswell. Growing up around and learning from people who have different lived experiences. Learning how to give respect, show love, and figure out how to work together as a community to help children learn, grow, and enjoy being a child. You were elected to represent the will of the people in North Carolina. Voting for this bill wastes our taxpayer money through court costs, money that could go towards the things that parents truly need. Buses that show up reliably, appropriate class sizes. Thank you.
Jeff Anderson.
My name is Jeff Anderson, and I am a resident of Clayton, North Carolina. I'm here to speak against Senate Bill 49. I am a parent of two children, one who does identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community. Currently, the school is able to weigh the needs of her and her classmates on a case-by-case basis. They can do the right thing. If a student is in danger from their parents, the school can direct resources appropriately. What I'm also concerned about is the students who have abusive parents. Those abusive parents are now getting fed information by the school that can cause direct harm for the children involved. Not everyone has good parents, and this is going to hurt a lot of people. Thank you.
Jason Pickler.
Mr. Chair, I'm here to speak on a different matter, SB 452. Should I wait until that matter is addressed, or should I proceed?
Yeah, Chair apologizes. Okay. Yeah, you can have a seat in the front row right there, as a matter of fact. Senate Bill 49 speakers. The last one is Margot F.
Hello, my name is Dr. Margot Falk. I am a family physician in Caswell County, and I am here today on behalf of my patients to ask you not to pass this bill. I believe it will be incredibly damaging to the mental health of our youth and will create a physical safety threat. Just this past week, I had a 14-year-old girl sitting across from me in my office in tears. She had just attempted to commit suicide the week prior, in large part due to no longer being able to see a future for herself in rural Caswell County. I know many youth who are in these sort of situations, and for some of them, their teachers are the only place they feel able to turn to find a safe lifeline. This bill will rip away that lifeline and will result in higher rates of suicide among our youth. I know that you share the same vision that I do of communities where families are kept together, where youth are safe and supported and able to stay in their rural communities and flourish as themselves and their families. This bill will work directly against that. Thank you.
Members, that's the end of public comment for Senate Bill 49. Is there any other discussion or debate from the committee on Senate Bill 49? Seeing none, Representative Torbett moves for a favorable report. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. Ayes have it. The bill receives a favorable report.